levels or surge levels go from some place that you don't want to be to the office where you need to know about. Now that's just some of the things that SCADA does, but SCADA is also a very expensive application to run. In one community I'm familiar with, they had 54 telephone lines running out to the most godforsaken places you can imagine at like $50 a month so that they could call once a month or twice a month to get a little tiny piece of data brought back to the control center. This is absurd. When you look at the bill at the end of the year for that, a lot of money gets saved to move a very, very little bit of data. If you can replace that with wireless, that cost just completely disappears. And one of the things that anybody in here can definitely agree with, if you can go to your voters and say, well, last year we spent $100,000 and this year we spent $10,000, we're going to support that. Okay, fleet tracking. This is something that people have been talking about, but it actually is happening more readily. And I'm seeing it whether it's trucks going cross-country or whether it's enterprise rent-a-car trying to keep track of where the hell their vehicles are, or whether it's a government fleet and they just want to know where it is. Or Ash was even mentioning that in Cambridge they have the ability to GPS police cruisers even though they're not doing it. This is a real important thing that is going to become probably backed by DHS in the next few years, significantly more important. If you have the infrastructure in place that can handle this, you're there, you're ready to go. If you forget about these applications, 2 years down the road when you need to implement them, they're just not going to be there for you. Okay, high bandwidth applications. This is where it gets fun. Video conferencing, video on demand, distance learning, home medical monitoring, video surveillance, traffic monitoring, virtual arraignment, metropolitan land, telepresence, remote medical diagnostics, virtual 3D real estate tours. And for those of you who haven't seen that, if you've gone out on the web and you've seen 3 or 4 static pictures of a home and then seen a 3D tour where you can rotate the camera and look everywhere from the ceiling to the floor and all around, it's pretty impressive. It also requires a fair amount of continuous bandwidth, and what you'll find is this is one application real estate brokers will pay for. This is the best kind of advertising they can get to, formally show a home and entice somebody like me that's sick and tired of talking to people on the phone and going and looking at places that I don't want to buy. I can now actually view a home as it really looks, relatively speaking, and now decide whether or not I want to call the broker and go ahead and see it. Real-time traffic accident rerouting. There was a good discussion last night between a few of us sitting at the table over there as to whether or not this is actually viable. And is it viable this week? Well, maybe not. Will it be viable in 2 or 3 years? We can hope so. If you think about it, having been a Boston resident at a time in my life, driving down the Southeast Expressway when there's an accident, wouldn't it be nice if your vehicle just blinked at you and said, you want to take exit 19, and the vehicle ahead of you is going to take exit 20, and the vehicle behind you is going to take 21, and you all automatically route different routes around the accident so that the traffic is not impounded. Even if you don't know where you're going, your car can now give you GPS-style directions. Take this left, take that right, and make sure that the flow of traffic at least moves forward rather than people being backed up for an hour or 2 hours as it's happening. We're rapidly crossing a point where the magnetic sensors in street light intersections can no longer sense motorcycles or some of the automobiles because there just isn't enough iron for it to pick up on the magnet. We're going to get to a point where we're going to have to change how we manage our traffic patterns. This is something that you should be looking at, including in your networks, because as you build these networks out, if the capability to do these tasks are inherent to the design of the network, it's just a question of now making it happen as the technology becomes available. Planning for the future. If anything, when I sat down and created this slide, I said, well, that's kind of a fool's errand because I've learned anything whenever I try to guess the future, I find out I'm wrong. Or if I'm right, it's probably an accident. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep track of it. And there are some pretty good warning signs as to what we're going to see. Anybody here want to think that bandwidth demands are going to go down? Thank you. I don't think anybody here is going to try to put that one on us. So if you're pulling out a network right now and you're saying, well, we're going to supply 1 megabit to the end user, you're going to find that as far as I'm concerned, that's dial-up 2.0. And pretty soon a 1 megabit connection is going to be pretty much as worthless as dial-up is, as people are now thinking nothing of sending 7 megapixel cameras to 7 megapixel pictures to Walmart to have them developed and printed out for them. You just can't be looking at today's internet being viable 18 months out. The number of applications that we're going to see are going to continue to rise. I'm not going to even try to tell you what they are. Every month or so, somebody calls me up and says, hey, I'm doing this, and it's like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've heard in a long time. There are some really hot applications that are going to come out that are really going to change the way we interact in business and interact with our families and literally the way society functions. We need to remember that if we build networks that aren't allowing that, we're not going to be able to take advantage of it. The newest applications will generate the revenue. I'm going to stick by that statement even though I'm sure people can poke holes in it. But the fact of the matter is the newest, coolest thing generally gets the rich people to say, I'll whip out my MasterCard and pay for it. I suspect that that's going to continue to happen. The newest applications will generally suck up the most bandwidth. There may be exceptions to that rule too. But again, if you're not planning for excess network capacity, you won't ever find out. I touched on this a few minutes ago, but a network with no viable upgrade path is dead. It's just a question of what day you shut the lights off. So as you're building your network, you definitely want to be looking at what's going to happen a year, 2 years, 3 years out. I doubt